ahead and officially call the meeting to order. Is the meeting been properly posted and the roll been taken?
Yes.
Item number 2, our approval of the minutes. 2.1 is our approval of the minutes from the May 1st, 2023 meeting.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 3, our communication. Do we have any communications at this time? Then we'll move on to item number 4, which is the public hearing to review and possible recommendation regarding Michael Liebman for Mint Julep Motors. 4.1 is a public hearing on a request to consider a conditional use petition to allow a group development within vehicle sales or service and outdoor display land uses for Mint Julep Motors at 1346 Racine Street, tax parcel XD22 within the business local BL zoning district with a wellhead protection overlay. Again, applicant Michael for Mint Julep Motors. With that, I will go ahead and open the public hearing, and if staff wants to get things started, that'd be great.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, this was at 1346 Racine Street for an in-vehicle sales and service. This was in front of you guys maybe a year or two ago with Mr. Torkelson. So there's really not anything changing from what you guys approved back then, other than it's going to be a new owner. That was a limited conditional use. So since he's selling this to someone else, we make them come in front of you. The applicant is in the audience. If you have any questions for him, and when Mr. Torkelson was here, you guys gave him some things that he needed to finish up, and all of those items were taken care of at that time. So right now there isn't anything pending.
Yes, Kevin.
I just want to clarify that the light fixture that's mentioned in here, did we tell Torkelson to replace that, or did we miss it?
We missed it. It's actually located in the public right of way.
Oh, so you could take it down anytime.
We could.
And then I remember the conversation, we required curbing.
Yeah, and a road part of the dedication.
And when I looked at the photos and current condition, we never required curbing in the back.
Yeah, the previous approval did not require any curbing to the property.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Any other staff? Did you have anything else?
No, other than the applicants here, if you wanted to talk to them or ask them any questions.
I don't know if you want to add anything more that hasn't been shared already.
I'm Michael Liebman.
Yeah, if we could just have you come up to the podium, just.
Sure.
Thank you.
Up here?
Yeah, that way. We're recording and just,
Okay,
the
sure.
sound comes in a little bit.
I'm Michael Liebman. I'm the president and CEO of Mint Julep Motors. I'm the founder. So you're looking at the entire executive staff here. So I'm in my 8th year of business. First 4 in Madison, last currently in Jefferson. And this will be an opportunity for me to buy my own place. I've been leasing up to now. So it's an excellent property. We have a contract accepted to purchase it. We're going through contingencies now. We finished the inspection. The building's in very good shape. A few little minor things, but yeah, things are moving along very smoothly. No red flags as of yet. So it seems to be an ideal property for what I'm looking to do. So.
Thank you, Michael. Any questions for Michael or staff? Yes.
Michael, is this an additional property or
Nope. I'll be moving. So, yep.
what prompted you to look at Delavan?
Well, my partner Debbie and I are building a house in between Elkhorn and East Troy. And so I needed to find, my lease was not renewed at the previous place just because the current owner is basically taking back space that he had leased to people in previous years. His business is growing. So I knew last year that I would need to find another spot And this is a nice landing spot. I like the area. I've been in business now about 10 years, and wholesale a little bit before this. So, and obviously the work that's been done on this lot, it's with the pavement and the outlines of the parking lot, it's a lot of stuff that I won't have to do moving forward. So these places are very, very hard to find in terms of you know, the location and the cost and the zoning being, zoning has been a very big issue in trying to find a place that what sort of flies in one place doesn't fly in another, that kind of thing. So, yeah, this seemed to check all the boxes I was looking for.
Well, thanks for considering Delavan.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I didn't really have a question, I just had more of a comment, I guess. Under the first condition of approval, well, I guess it is a question. Item number 1 is the landscaping for the previously approved site plan must be completely installed by October 31st. And I just wanted to make sure that that plan has been shared with you. It wasn't, I didn't see it in our packet today to kind of refresh my memory as one of the conditions. So I'm glad the overall conditions have been met, but I just wanted to make sure that you've seen that, you know, because it, in my opinion, it could use a little additional landscape
I was not aware of.
to beautify it, so.
Are there conditions I would need to meet as the new owner to satisfy that?
I don't know if staff wants to share. It just says item number 1, landscaping per the previously approved site plan must be completely installed by October 31st, 2023. So I highlighted that. And when I look at the one picture, I didn't know, you know, it's hard. You can't see that unless you zoom in. That fence line there would that be a part of this property or the property further to the east?
I don't believe there's a fence on this particular property. I believe that belongs to MH Equipment.
Okay, I figured it was the other property owner. I just was curious because but yeah, I think just so you're aware, there's a plan out there, and I just wanted to make sure that it was shared with you because that is one of the conditions of approval. In addition to that, I just wanted to also let you know that we recently, as a city, introduced a facade grant program, which is fairly new, and wanted to make you aware there's obviously no guarantee that if you apply that you're gonna get a potential grant, but to me, this is one of the entrances, obviously a main entrance into our city, and I know you had said something, the building seemed fine and all that stuff, which is great for you. But under that new facade program, and if that language hasn't been shared with you, then I think staff certainly could share that with you, that it's a program like that would be ideal for new signage, possibly facade work, and so we could certainly make sure that you get those details as well.
Wonderful. I have already, you know, a big, you know, circular sign that's above the dealership where I am now, and a number of banners and whatnot that I've had professionally done. So considering painting and other things of that nature. So my reputation's impeccable. I guard it very closely. I want this to be a business as it exists now, obviously, but that will be welcoming. I service a lot of families, seniors, whatnot. So I want it to be welcoming and to be a nice site, you know, as people come into town. Good landing spot for people. So, yeah, no gorillas on the roof or pennants or plaid jackets. not my scene. So,
I too concur, and I think all of us thank you for considering Delavan and your future. So, okay, that's the only comments and questions that I have. So, yeah. Did you? Well,
You asked a question and Michael asked a question regarding condition number 1, and neither one of you got an answer.
I think, yeah.
Yeah, we can double check on that. If there is anything missing, it's very minor, but I believe that most of it has been done.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any other questions, comments from Michael or staff? Thank you.
okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't know if we have any other citizens in attendance that wish to speak on this issue at this time. welcome that if so. If not, I would go ahead and close the public hearing. And we'll move on to item number 4.2, which is again, to consider a conditional use petition to allow for an in-vehicle sales or service and outdoor display land uses for Julep Motors at 1346 Racine Street, tax parcel XD 22, within the business local BL zoning district with a wellhead protection overlay. Again, applicant Michael for Julep Motors. Is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that use be passed along as stated in the minutes.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. We'll move on to item number 5, which is the public hearing to review a possible recommendation regarding Toronto Builders. 5.1 is a public hearing on a request to consider a planned infill development amendment to the zoning map for a step 3 general development plan GDP at 1616 Hobbs Drive, tax parcel XCDB3-5, located in the manufacturing light ML zoning district to allow for a group development residential apartment complex. Again, applicant Toronto Builders, continued from 2023 planning commission. So, public hearing's already been open, so if you wanna.
Good.
Yeah.
Paul Van Hinkle, I'm the engineer and on the project. And a couple things, we've been over this several times since we got out in the industrial park and dealt with the community out there about changing use and things like that. It's a nice site. It's, Toronto, which has probably 1,500 of these units around the area, kind of understands the market. These are high-end units. They're built well, well insulated. We extra insulation in the walls and the better upgraded windows, so we're not worried about the noise from the interstate. If you notice, most of their units are closer to the interstate now because they like that exposure. Some of the census data they've reviewed on Delavan is, you can understand the growth has been almost zero according to 2020 census. And based on some of the research they've been doing, it's mostly because of your housing stock shortage. There's not enough units, you have trouble providing housing for some of the new professional people. And that's what this is. This is upscale. Most of their tenants are 3 or 4 years. They're professional people. They like the underground parking, which is a nice feature. They like the upscale unit, the individual washer and dryers in every unit, the upgraded 9-foot ceilings. Some of the amenities we've provided, and they submitted that list to you, so I don't need to go over them. And we've been working with the staff about some of the conditions and things like that. And again, we don't have a problem with any of the conditions, so for maybe the first 2 or 3, we think the number is correct. They've got this unit set up to provide that many units. It's how they operate. They need that to provide the amenities that they're looking at. It's very similar. It's the same density we have over at Falcon Ridge, which are the 2 units going up there now. They then can take advantage of the staff. They have on-site 24/7 staff, and they'll have them both units, and they can share some of the services. So we don't know if there's any gain from the city standpoint by reducing the number. We think that'd be a negative for the city. Since again, we're trying to provide some housing for the city that we think are short. And then on the parking, we did not have islands. We do have some islands on the site, but we don't have them every 10 squares of parking stalls. We have some islands where we think they're appropriate. And then, so there's some spots that there's more than 10 parking stalls without an island. So I think maybe we could have the staff approve the landscape plan, which we've given you a preliminary landscape plan, which we think is nice. And they like the upgrade to landscape plan compared to what you'll normally see in an apartment complex. So if you want to make that a condition of the staff approving the landscape plan, we think that'd be more appropriate than than dictating the number of stalls. Because what happens if we had to add islands everywhere, every 10 stalls, we'd add a couple more islands, now we gotta put some parking someplace else. Normally you add that in the front of the units, or front of the project during it, off the entrance road, and it doesn't look as good, it's not as attractive. We're somewhat restricted in the back with the access, with the setbacks from the interstate for the DOT, so we can't provide any parking there. Again, we have 2 underground parking levels here, so that back, we're dropping 20 feet down to get in there, so that will be a retaining wall, and there'll be some kind of protection, some kind of wall on top to provide safety for somebody not falling over the 20-foot drop there. But again, you know, they got elevators, they got, all the garbage will be inside, all the floors will have a chute to get down to the garbage, so it's like 3 elevators. All the common space will have security and cameras. So like I said, they've been doing this for a while, for over 20 years. They know their market. They've got them in East Troy, Whitewater, Beloit. We got another project working on for Elkhorn and Wanego. So it's kind of the I-43 corridor. We think that's a growth area. We think there's a need. And we've gone over this several times, so I don't want to bore you with that. But again, we're concerned with conditions 1 and 2. And then number 3, I'm assuming that was a noise study for the interstate, or was that for us generating noise in the industrial park? I didn't quite understand.
You're asking to be put in the industrial complex. And we don't want to penalize the businesses that are in the industrial complex as a result of any potential noise in the future.
Okay, we actually did, we spent a lot of time out there going to all the facilities, and they like the site. They're not concerned about the noise. If you want to waive, I mean, they're not gonna complain about the noise. So I don't think, you know, there's the Aurora Clinic on one side, there's a law office pretty close. So we could do a study and tell you what the noise is gonna be, but I don't know from our standpoint, we're not concerned about the noise. We're not concerned about the interstate noise. We think that's more of a positive, that access and that exposure, than it is a negative. Even if people who drive by here says, yeah, I wanna live there, because it's easy in and out. It's right where they need to be. And we've had a lot of positive comments from the school district looking for places for their teachers. We think that's the market out here. And they haven't built a lot of housing. You know, we did another subdivision on the north side of town that sold out pretty well. So we think, and Tronomy thinks that Delavan short, they're providing the service, we think will be very successful. So I'd like to consider not reducing the number of units, or we think if staff just approves a landscape plan, we'll work with them to provide the buffer in some of the parking areas, but we don't want to be limited to 10, every 10 stalls. We don't want to have this is not a Walmart or a Target or something like that, where you could provide a big parking area where that may be more appropriate. It's a tight site. So we're fitting something in here and we think it's a good site, but we prefer to provide a better landscaping plan, maybe some detail and some more plantings than have every 10 stalls being required. They have a little island that's tough to maintain and tough to plow and tough to keep grass growing there, quite frankly. So those are the 3 items. If you want to talk about the noise study, I guess we could refer that to staff too, if they want to provide some more detail. But we drove around there at night, we drove around there during the day. Tom Larson, you know, one of the Toronto partners, we didn't see any issue with noise, both from us generating it, from anybody else generating it. The other item too was, we show a stormwater pond on the site. It's really not a stormwater pond. There's enough storage in Condon Pond. It was designed for the whole industrial park for stormwater storage. This is the surge. We're hooking into some stormwater pipes that the city of Delavan has installed in there. And during a major storm, we may get some backup. And this is kind of what it's designed for. We'd rather have that at green space. We could design a parking lot where we'd back up in the parking lot for 10 or 15 minutes, and that's normally what you do. But we felt it's more appropriate to have that done in a green space. We think it's more attractive. So if somebody wanted some additional parking and they're fine with restricting some parking in some of the units here, because there's a lot more one-unit bedrooms than you'll normally see in an apartment complex, and that's based on their demand and their research from their other units. There's more one-bedroom apartments here than 2 or 3. So they've done a lot of work in this site. We've met with a lot of people in the city. We think it's a nice site. It'd be very compatible with Falcon Ridge. And we'd ask for your support. And if there's any issues, we'd be happy to work them out with staff.
Thank you. Any questions? I have one. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
If you don't do the islands, how many additional parking spaces can you get?
We could probably, well, what happens is we'll put them on some of the sloped areas. We're going down in underground parking. So we could add parking, but now somebody's gonna have to then walk up some of these slopes, and especially in the winter. So we'd rather have that in a landscape area and not put the landscaping between these every 10 slopes. I don't think we'd have to add, we'd only lose 2 or 3 parking stalls, but it's 2 or 3 we'd have to put someplace else, kind of awkward, I'd say. So I'd rather.
And just to clarify that, the staff report identified that if you had to put in the buffers or 10 feet, whatever they're called, that you'd lose parking. You relocate that parking.
Yeah.
But it would be less convenient, right? So we'd still be dealing with the same impermeable
It would.
surface area, and it would more likely, as you represent it, be in a sloped area.
Yeah, it would be not, they have, the surrounding's amazing. They started, 2 brothers and a father, and now they've got 1,500 units heading to 3,000. They really understand their market. Falcon Ridge, we don't have that requirement every 10 spaces. It's a tight site. And we think you really like that one. So it was just from a design standpoint, we'd rather add some more money in the landscaping than have a 10-foot island where it's tough to maintain, and especially if you're salting and things like that. And the other thing is we could add parking where we have what we call the stormwater pond. It's really not a storm. We can put parking there and still meet your ordinance, your stormwater ordinance and things like that. But now you lose the green space and things like that. So, and again, if they had a problem with parking over the next couple of years, it'd be based on the demand and what the tenants would want. We maybe come back here and say, hey, we'd like to add some additional parking, but right now, based on their market and their experience in the market, they think this is the appropriate number.
Yes, Kevin.
Well, so and this is, maybe you could share the podium. Item number 3, applicant shall retain the services of a third party to complete a noise study to measure the current noise levels during different types of the day, and demonstrate how they propose to mitigate noise impacts to a level acceptable by the city. So, my question is, are we asking the applicant to study incoming noise and tell us how to enforce a noise ordinance on people who might be causing noise outside of their place?
I can speak.
Yeah, that would,
Okay.
I was gonna ask.
I was confused with
The
that.
staff report. So the idea is that is this mic on?
Yes.
You can hear? It? Okay. Maybe not. We are considering a multifamily development within the business park. And the business park was obviously here first. And we reviewed and approved a comprehensive plan amendment to consider allowing for a multifamily development here. And so we're not going to penalize the business park for the noise that they're making now because this multifamily project would be considered. So the idea is to understand the level of noise that exists now, so that the applicant can either do enhanced insulation, enhanced windows, or other means, so that this becomes a habitable, livable apartment building that's not negatively adversely affected by what's already happening in the business park. So the idea was to kind of flip it around onto the applicant to show us that they're going to create a livable space for their residents, rather than us enforcing on our noise ordinance on the business park, which we're already would be doing.
Ms. Thatcher would call that nannyism. And it would appear to me that the market and Geronimi accepts the risk of excessive noise if it exists or exists in the future. And so I don't understand why you make the recipient in the market subject to attempting to mitigate a perceived risk or a future risk. I principally to staff, and I just don't understand that.
I think one thought in going into that was that the city's stuck with this building regardless of how Geronimi does in the future, who owns it in the future, and it's going to be impacting the community. And so ensuring that it's remains marketable is kind of the thought process. I certainly understand your perspective.
So going with that thought process, we should be making every business that comes into the city do this then.
So I suggest that if the city of Delavan chooses to ever redevelop the lot across from my street on North 4th Street, that they send someone with a decibel meter out there at midnight and tell me whether or not they can hear the interstate and allow a home to be developed there.
So this is just coming out of the fact that we're considering approval of residential in the business.
But we've already approved.
We have not.
No, we have already approved the capability for it to be approved.
And I appreciate the additional questions and comments regarding the third condition. Can you speak to the first and the second as to staff's thoughts on that, and if?
So I guess if I could, if you don't mind, I'll provide a little step back a bit and provide a little more higher level thoughts on this. So, you know, I think when this project first came before us, it looked a lot like the Falcon Ridge project, and we felt generally pretty positive about that project. So seeing that come forward again, I felt positively about, and in some ways I still do. I do note that though this location is less ideal than the Falcon Ridge project. Falcon Ridge was surrounded by multifamily on two sides and was adjacent to a park. This project is in the
It's,
business park.
Falcon Ridge is surrounded by multifamily on exactly one side.
Thank you. And so, you know, this is a little bit more of a squeeze to make it work. But certainly I feel that there's potential for multifamily to be successful here, even though there isn't any around in the area and it's adjacent to the business park. So, and for that reason, you know, I have a little more trepidation about it. They're also asking for a lower parking ratio than they had asked for the Falcon Ridge project. And so they're kind of pushing it even more so than we had pushed it in the previous project. There are definitely some great aspects about the project. As I mentioned, we like to see structured parking or underground parking, which reduces the amount of surface parking. I think that's really excellent. They're upscale units, very high quality, nice amenities for the tenants. But it does feel that they are trying to fit quite a lot onto this site, given the size of the site. If you'll see in the flexibilities listed for the project, they're seeking increased density of 33 dwelling units per acre above the ordinary density of 12 dwelling units per acre. So they're almost approaching triple the density that would be allowed.
Excuse me? Completely based on the fact that we're not dealing with surface parking as the primary parking element, right?
Well, yeah, if you have
Thank you.
underground parking, you're allowed, you can get more units out of the lot. Yes, I would agree. Also looking at lot size, flexibility, which was the same as for Falcon Ridge. Height flexibility, flexibility for numbers of units in building. So none of those things are inherently bad, but just being aware of the fact that, you know, we are considering approval of something that's quite a bit bigger than would be approved under normal zoning, which is exactly what this planned infill development is for. So it, you know, I identified a number of different issues that are fixable, I feel, with the site plan, such as landscape islands not being provided, some site circulation issues, lack of open space for residents, all these issues, shortage of parking, I should say. All these issues could be somewhat addressed by reducing the number of units in the project. So by having fewer units, we have less parking demand, we could have a little more open space, we could have landscaped islands in the parking lot, it wouldn't be such a tight site. And I
So-
understand the developer has, you know, numbers that they need to hit, so it's really up to them whether that's practical for them.
Do you consider its proximity to park area as a way to address the lack of green space?
I think you could.
Okay. Did you consider it?
I did not for this project because it's not next to it.
The Cognitive Park is right across the street.
Well, that's
Yeah,
right.
just west.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
simple walking trail provided behind.
In your estimation, how many additional parking spots?
So we-
See that in there?
Yeah, well, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I didn't see the number when I looked at them, there, as far as what you would like
Sure.
to see as far as the parking.
So the city regulates parking based on the number of bedrooms in each, the number of bedrooms per dwelling unit. So a one-bedroom dwelling unit would require 2 parking spaces. But once you get above 2 bedrooms, we require 2.5.
When
And
you
so-
say above, is
Two
that
bedrooms
2 and
and
above? Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, 2 and above, thank you. And so I think it's a good thing to provide that, 2 bedrooms and above because you have more family situations are accommodated potentially. So I think the code is appropriate for a place like Delavan to,
One question, is it normal because the generational changes, younger people are not getting, number one, married, and number two, they're not having children?
Mhm.
Is it reasonable to require 2 parking spots per bedroom now? Is that normal for most municipalities around this area when they're looking at that? And taking into consideration the changes that have happened in society?
I think so, because, okay, so you're talking about a 1-bedroom apartment,
So what's the requirement for parking in a one-bedroom apartment in the University District in Madison?
I actually talked to my colleagues about this. In some places, they don't even have parking requirements.
Right.
This is not Madison. There's no transit here. Madison has a robust transit system, so we're assuming pretty much everybody is gonna have at least 1 car. There are 2 adults, like an unmarried couple or a married couple with no kids, they're gonna each have a car and they're gonna have to drive to their job. So I did
Do
give
you
some
have
thought
any
to this.
confidence in the market at all?
Excuse me?
Do you have any confidence in the market at all?
To regulate its own parking needs.
Yeah.
I think you're asking if I have any confidence in the developer to decide its own parking requirements?
No, because if a renter approaches an apartment complex and understands that they're only gonna be guaranteed 1 rental place and perhaps 1 service place, do you have any confidence in the market that that renter might say, crap, we can't live here because there's not enough room for our 2 cars?
I think that's up to you guys to decide.
Okay,
And I do have one more, I'm sorry, since we're on this.
but I will note, the staff member shook his head no, he has no confidence in the market.
Zero.
Really? Yeah, in that,
Brassworks, how many parking stalls did we require for that? Because I think we were short on that.
And that's why we have cars parked on the street.
well, and
But
our
they
cars,
can though.
so Mark, on North Fourth Street, are there cars parked on the street? On any of the major thoroughfares in the city of Delavan, are cars parked on the street?
I'd say yes.
Okay.
Chris, did you have any question?
No,
Oh,
sorry.
oh, no, okay.
No, just thinking.
Yeah, that's okay. I know one, I mean, is it, even though there's no parking along Hobbs Drive, was that the rationale that we were worried that residents that would live in a development like this would be trying to, if there was a parking shortage, that they would be trying to maybe park along Hobbs Drive? Is
I think
it
so.
safe to say?
Maybe convince the owner of item, 7.2, I think it is. Just put in a parking garage.
Mark, I'll let you like share your thoughts about maybe people trying to park along Hobbs Drive.
You would, I mean, the fact that we're in an industrial park, that we're on a curve, on-street parking would not be a good location for this area. I mean, that's my concern, is not having enough on-site parking for the potential tenants there. We have, I mean, just strategic alone is like 60 through trips a day of semis going in and out, just that one, so it's a concern.
So you would say so your concern is, commercial use?
My concern is having residents trying to park on an industrial road, on a very busy road in a curve.
Well, sorry.
They can't, so they get ticketed or towed.
If it's posted no parking, they could get ticketed and towed, yes.
Is it marked now?
Only one side is limited to no parking, because we don't typically have people who park in an industrial park.
Do people park if the overflow from Hagen Park?
No, because that section of the road is, because of all the curves, there's no parking on both sides.
Which is near this location.
Within a half block, yes.
Are we still in the public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, Will had a question or.
Jackie, for my edification here, the density requirements, as you pointed out, this is almost 3 times in excess of the city's density. If we could go back and are you aware of, or could you enlighten me as to why the city has a density requirement of 12?
I'm not sure exactly why. I know that is the requirement for the RM12 zoning district. And so I think the thinking is often that if a project is gonna have more than 12 dwelling units per acre, bringing them to the PID process is helpful because it gives the city a little bit more control
Right,
about the
so,
design of the site.
so to parse your answer, you'd say that was our common planning practice to ensure that anything with higher density would come before the board.
Excuse me, I'd like her to finish answering my question.
She did,
No, she did not. She was still talking.
sorry, well. But she
Yeah, pretty
clarified
much
her
covered it,
answer.
but the idea is that anything higher density would have extra review.
And this requirement of 12 came from,
That I'm not sure of. I think that was probably late 90s when the code was adopted.
All right, if we can step away from that for a minute.
So was I recognized or not, Mayor?
I did, I thought
Okay.
was done, but I'm sorry. Will.
So that while it might have been adopted in 1990, it was reinforced in the 2000 smart growth, the 2010 smart growth, and 2020 smart growth periods, right?
Yes.
So it's only been approved 4 times.
Will, did you have anything?
Thank you. Yeah, I do. My next question is with regard to the islands and the parking. The purpose of those islands is what?
So we tend to require these because the goal is to break up long strings of parking lot. It creates a nicer environment for residents. Those landscape islands usually have a tree or shrubbery in them, so it's just more pleasing environment. It does have a modest improvement to impervious surface because you do get some stormwater infiltration there. As the applicant mentioned, that's something that we would often require as well for a big box store like a Walmart or a Target. I would think at the very least, we'd want our residential developments to have better parking lots than our Walmart and Target, not worse. And so I would feel that that's an important part of creating a nice living environment.
Is there any requirement as to the surface finish for these islands?
Seeded the
They
landscape.
do have to be seeded, or gravel or something like that?
Typically like to see turf and a tree, a small tree.
And that's provided that way in our current code.
Chicky, we do have islands.
One final observation with regard to stormwater.
Mhm.
I have to disagree with the developer's position that the Condon Pond currently is adequate to handle the additional runoff that would be proposed by this development. In fact, Condon has flooded in several years in the near past, causing some damage in the park itself. So adding to that, I don't think is appropriate.
Well, all I was saying, it was designed to handle some development on this site when it was designed.
Yeah, I understand that, what you said, what I'm saying is I don't agree.
So if it was an industrial site, it would probably have more runoff than what we're proposing. That's the way it was designed.
But that's why, is that not why we're considering or requiring a stormwater retention pond?
That's why we're adding the pond. We could add the retention in the parking area, which you prefer. Like, we're just adding some more retention than to help the situation.
Okay, maybe I misunderstood. I thought you were suggesting that you would prefer not to add the retention pond.
No, we're not talking about reducing the amount of retention we're having here. We're just talking about, are we putting it in the green area or are we gonna put it in the parking area? Because some of most developments you do now, parking lot will back up for 10 or 15 minutes during a heavy rainstorm. And it's designed to back up in the parking area because nobody's coming out when it's downpouring and things like that. You can design them like that. And that's how most of the industrial sites are designed to retain some of the water in the parking areas. We just opted on this site to have more green space, but we could go back and add additional parking and would not change the amount of storage we're providing.
I'm confused. Are you or are you not requesting that the requirement for a stormwater retention pond?
Oh, Ryan's here. He did the design the stormwater system, and it meets the city's ordinance. So
Yeah, we work with staff, we understand we have to do rate control, we're not
asking for any kind of relief on that. We're just, my only statement was, if you require additional parking, we probably take the green area that we're using for some of the stormwater storage and put parking there, and then also have some of the parking area act as stormwater storage.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Chris? Is you?
Yeah, I forgot.
Okay, Kevin?
That's good.
So, how do we feel about the Abbey Way Apartments having 17, parking places in a row without, island and the Delavan Court Department's having 20 spaces in a row without islands. Do we feel they're abject? And that they're horrible parking facilities for the residents there?
Is that a rhetorical
They
question?
appear to be full. I mean, that's the only reason we're building more apartments.
Or
I've got it.
judgment on the part of the plan commission.
I didn't hear.
I've got, I guess, I mean, it sounded like to me, from what I had heard from the developers, that the developer is willing to work with staff on a landscaping that meets approval.
true.
It just may not have an island for every 10
We don't have an
spaces.
island
Not-
every,
it's
we
not that
do have
you're not
island,
putting
area
islands
landscape
in.
areas that breaks up the parking, we just don't, we have a couple spots that are over 10 stalls long. So,
I mean, my concern with that is we're gonna have to give up parking spaces to accommodate these islands, and that's exacerbating the parking issue we already have.
Oh,
So I don't think it's a matter of just sitting down and addressing it. I think we've got a parking problem that we need to address too.
So I guess what I'm asking is that if we didn't, yeah, if we required every 10, then we'd have even more of a problem, or am I missing
Yes,
something?
that's correct.
So if we didn't make them do it every 10 surface parking spots, I thought I had heard something that maybe some parking could be added.
we could add some parking.
did we require 10 on Falcon Ridge?
I don't believe so. I think they had more islands.
So that was what, a year and a half ago?
Falcon Ridge is also in a residential area, though. So they do have street parking available and other options.
Yeah, shorter street parking there, man. No, but I'm asking about the island specifically.
Well, Jim, do we have a number or an estimate of how many parking places we're short?
We're short 19,
How
right?
many?
19 parking spaces.
So it's a significant number of parking.
Yes.
Out of a total of how many?
How many units are there?
Yeah, that,
Honestly,
There's a total of 297.
so 297 parking places are already being permitted?
and that's including underneath.
Yes.
Okay, so the 19 is, yes, that's significant.
That was my first question, was what that number was that we were short of. So I just wanted to be sure.
And by removing the islands, you pick up approximately,
I want to be clear about this too. I see maybe three parking islands now, which in my estimation is not really meeting what I would like to see, which is 1 per 10. Now I understand we're kind of negotiating here.
Well, I don't think, sorry, I don't appreciate the word negotiating because,
Yeah, I agree. I'm sorry.
But
I just want to be clear,
because in this type of parking lot, it's not that open parking lot type feel. Honestly, it's not even close to Shopko, it's not even close to a Walmart. You have parking on one side, you have parking on the other. It's a row of parking. I don't honestly, me personally, on the planning commission, don't think that any islands are necessary in this type of situation. And then losing only 19 spots right now. And I will tell you, I will bet money on it, that you can find probably out of those, 100 single units,
mhm.
there will be individuals in there by themselves. So I guarantee you at least 19 of those 100 will probably be single vehicles. And then there are individuals that when they, if an older couple happens to move in, there might only be one car. So I don't think 19's that huge of an issue, and I forgot what they're called now.
Islands.
The islands, I think, are honestly mostly ugly things, because when you go to Shopko or you go to Walmart or you go to PetSmart, they are not taken care of. They're usually a really big eyesore. That's my opinion.
So I just want to be clear that if we take the islands out, we'd only take out 3 islands that are proposed here.
Well, no, we're
So I
talking
was-
about taking,
I was saying we should put islands in, which they're not currently. proposed.
taking out condition 2,
Oh,
the increased number.
got it.
Right.
Taking out the condition.
And then just another question for staff, couldn't, just to alleviate any potential concerns for, parking and the other side of the street, certainly change the parking requirements along there for the future so that it is no parking on both sides, so that we are back to an enforcement type issue if somebody were trying to park in the currently area where it's not posted, no parking at this time.
That would to the city council.
Right,
Wouldn't you?
right,
Yeah, I would
that's,
think that your friends in the GOC might act on that.
and that's what, cause I too have a concern, you know, someone trying to park along there, but if we take that away and we post it, then that takes away my personal concern and maybe staff's too, and then it's truly an enforcement issue.
Well, something that also you might want to consider is with a shortage of parking, you're also gonna be adding pressure to, public parking in places like Convent Gardens.
The hypothetical
Yes, please.
parking pressure.
Yeah, I have no glass ball that's gonna show me what's gonna happen down the road. I'm saying, is that something that needs to be considered? People looking for a place to park, this is public parking, and it's a place for them to park.
Well,
For gas.
If I may add.
just one quick thing. Is Cogman Park 24-hour parking? No. So it,
After 10 o'clock.
after 10, yeah.
And if I may add, we're not opposed to adding a restriction in the lease to limit 2 parking stalls per unit. So if that's your concern, they'd be happy to do that. One
Would
thing.
you expand on what you're suggesting by these restrictions?
Well, basically, because then you would reduce the amount of parking stalls. That was, I think it was Jackie, one of Jackie's suggestions, wasn't it? So that was, staff suggested that you may want to reduce or, make a restriction in the lease, the whole 2, even in the 2 or 3 bedrooms require in a lease that you only allow 2 stalls. So that, we're not opposed to that. I guarantee on the clubhouse situation, there may be a graduation or a 100th birthday of somebody that one day, that there may be a couple hours, somebody parking out in the street. But if they got people parking on the street, Geronimo, it's very good how they manage this. They go find more parking stalls because that's the market. People are gonna, we got underground parking, you know, when they got underground parking, they gotta park on the street. That's why they get assigned a spot on an underground. That's their spot. So that's why these are upsize or upscale type units. They don't want to be parking on the street. They've got nicer vehicles and they don't want to be out there, especially with snow plows and industrial site down the street. So if they had that problem, they would solve that problem. You know, they both live here in town. They lived out in Elkhorn up the street here. So that's not an issue. So, and they understand that. They're big boys. They're over 1,500 years now, going to 3,000. So they understand what they're doing. They understand the market. And I think you're gonna be impressed. What you see in Falcon Ridge, I'm sure you guys are you're gonna like that, and you're gonna like this even better. So, and again, it wasn't so much the islands, we do have some islands out here, it was that the requirement that every 10 spots you had to have an island, because if you had 13 or 14, we didn't wanna put an island in the middle there and redo the parking because it's set up, they have a front door and stuff. And these are like, and I know how the ordinance, I've been doing this for a long time, 40 years, some years. And in the old days, we'd have apartment buildings and we'd have miles, seems like miles and miles of asphalt for parking to meet the ordinances. Well, this is a different market. These are upscale, these are underground parking. That's what sells in Wisconsin now, underground parking. I mean, you get in your unit, get in your car where it doesn't have snow, That's a big deal. That's big, it's just a different product, and some of the ordinances aren't catching up, you know, so, this is we're at the GDP, this is not the, PIP, this is not the precise implement plan, so if there's some issues with some of these, we'll address them at the PIP level, but right now, it's just the general development plan, but we're concerned about the numbers of the units and the number of parking stalls, so, and the requirement of when to get them, so. Again, you get another kick at the cat here, kick at the dog, or whatever your species is here, when we do the PIP.
Any other questions for the petitioner or staff? Anyone else in attendance wish to speak on this issue at this time? Seeing and hearing none, with that, I would close the public hearing. To item 5.2, which is considered a request for a plan control development amendment to the official zoning map for step 3 general development plan GDP, the 1616 Hobbs Drive tax parcel XCDP3-5, located in the manufacturing light ML zoning district to allow for approved development residential apartment complex and applicant Tromney Builders. Is there a motion? Yes, oh, yes, Kevin.
I'd make a motion, to consider the request for planned infill development amendment to official zoning map for a step 3 general development plan at 1616 Hobbs Drive, tax parcel XCDB3-5, located in the manufacturing light zoning district to allow for a group development residential apartment complex with the exception of the listed conditions number 1, 2, and 3.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So striking 1, 2, and 3.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes.
Thank you.
Moving on to item number 6 is the public hearing to review and possible recommendation regarding the city of Delavan. 6.1 is a public hearing for proposed zoning code amendments pertaining to 23.82, parent 2, parent F, sign materials, 23.8, 29, parent 2, parent H, sign location, 23.829, parent 4, signage rehabilitation and restoration, 24.9, 13, parent 11, 11, signage regulations in the downtown overlay district continued from May 1st, 2023 meeting.
All right. So this is a carryover from a few months ago when we, last month, when we had a lot of zoning code cleanup items, and this one needed a little bit more attention. And so we brought this back for the commission to review. Just as a quick overview, we're basically, our objective here is to kind of clean up the fact that there are rules for downtown signs in the downtown sign overlay, as well as in the sign ordinance. And I think the objective when we did the sign ordinance was to have all the sign rules in one place. And so this recommendation is basically strike the rules for signage in the downtown overlay and create a cross-reference to the sign code. So if anybody's reading the overlay, they would know to look at the sign code. And then to bring in a few of these requirements that should really just be in the sign code. So I wanted to note that we are bringing in the sign materials, and that would include all the materials that we reviewed at the last meeting, clarifying that canvas or fabric is for awnings only. And then my recommendation is that we add language that says plastic's not permitted unless it's designed to replicate or simulate one of the permitted materials.
Oh, yes, Kevin.
So just to clarify that, so plastic is generally permitted as a sign face throughout the city, except for in the central, I mean, in the historical overlay, right? And then the plastic there has to simulate, right, so wood grain plastic, for example, or tin plastic, yeah.
So that makes sure it looks like something that we're trying to promote, but
Got it.
maybe is a little lower cost, lighter weight, more durable. Bringing forward sign location rules, just clarifying the sign shall not cover significant architectural features such as cornices, decorative brickwork. And then also bringing forward rules about maintenance of legal non-conforming signs.
So,
Yes,
so on this one, this was the Bradley sign is never gonna be legal again discussion, right? And the way we're providing for that is the Bradley sign can be reconstructed in its very historic fashion. But I read this as still not providing for example, a blade sign at the theater.
And this is related to a sign that projects above the second floor.
Right, and so that theater historically had a blade sign above its marquee sign. So by ordinance now, that sign would be illegal. And some, if you go back and look at, and this is a conversation we've had across the last 20 years, Will and I have been involved in this, the definition of what is a historic downtown sign is either somebody's fairy tale Disney version of what downtown Delavan looked like in a Victorian era, or if you look at the good work the Historical Society done, there's tons of attractive 1940s, 50s blade signs with neon and stuff like that have been eliminated that were truly historic signs, right? And right now, the way this is written, we're coming to a position that says if someone wanted to make an application to put up one of those signs again, we would have to deny it. Because they were all on the second floor.
Art, did you want to add?
I guess just one suggestion, when Jim Beal was here, and the, we call it a blade sign, the projecting sign that used to be at the theater was there. I think that would fall under what's now a character sign in our current sign code, and I think we talked about that during the sign code revamp, for special situations like that.
All in
Do you
favor of
know-
it happening, but it says that, we can't put a sign up above on a second floor.
And there's already, honestly, a lot, most of those signs are technically on the second floor already. The question I have is, do you think that is, or you know it is? Because to me, when somebody says, I think we want to know so that we can make this decision correct.
Because I think the spirit in the overlay district should be restoration of historical signs, irrespective of our view of what the history was, right? I mean, so if it's 1930s and 40s,
Can I ask a question while they're looking? Sure. So I'm hearing, there's two different things we're talking about, and please correct me if I was wrong. There's existing signs that may be considered non-conforming because they project above the second floor, maybe they're too big, whatever it may be. We want to see those continue, maybe updated with the new business name.
but the way it's written, we can't.
Well, I'm trying to understand what we're trying to achieve, so we can write.
Because if
write
I
the
read
right
it
language.
correctly, if I read it correctly, if and we'll speak specifically, because it's a sign we all know. If the Bradley sign had to be repaired, it could only be repaired with the high script B and the siding front, because that's what exists at the time of the ordinance. Now, the Bradley's people, it would seem to me the right answer would be if the Bradley's people said, we already have this blade sign, it got knocked over in the wind, we'd prefer it to be a simpler blade sign that uses the old Bradley's logo, right? I would say that one would want the flexibility to consider allowing that. And the way the ordinance is written, and I'm not a lawyer, but the way it looks to me, it couldn't be adopted in any fashion than it exists today. It's like Nantucket ripping down a Kresge sign.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, thank you. So I'm gonna come back to this in a second. So I wanna finish my initial question here, which was, we've got non-conforming signs we wanna see preserved, reused, reconstructed perhaps based on, and we're also talking about new projecting and new blade signs that are created. So I think those are two different things that we should be sure to keep straight. The new signs one is a little easier to answer, so I'll start with that one. So that would be, as staff indicated, downtown character signs. We want to do something a little unusual.
So can you read it?
Sure. Well, I'm not gonna read the whole thing. However, I mean.
Well, why? We have to make a decision.
Well, the part that we care about is that the city may permit flexibility for the regulations found in sign ordinance as follows. So that includes area increases, sign area increases, sign colors, illumination, but specifically we have a location provision so that the city may permit flexibility to allow up to 2/3 of the sign area may be permitted to project up above the parapet or roof of the building. So it could go above the first floor and even above the roof if the city wanted to approve that. So that covers our new sign.
So we can build Las Vegas signs.
Yeah. That's the goal.
As long as there's antennas.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So then in terms of non-conforming signs, I think you bring up a really good point. So the way the code is written now, normal signs, outside of the downtown overlay, we have a little more lenience. And so a sign that's considered non-conforming, would only need to come into conformance with the ordinance if it's the property is undergoing a change in the major land use category. So if it's the business is rotating between a bar and a restaurant or an office, like that's all commercial land use. It doesn't trigger the need for it to come into conformance. For some reason, there was a sign in any part of the city that's changing from, let's say, commercial to industrial or commercial to residential or whatever it may be, that would trigger a need for the sign to come into conformance with the ordinance. The way that it's written in the overlay is a little even more strict, limiting, basically you can only repair your non-conforming
Right.
sign. And then as you were saying, if they're changing the material or message or anything to the original appearance, they need to remove it and bring something in that's conforming. So based on this conversation, it sounds like that's not the approach the Planning Commission wishes to see. And then I'm also hearing there might be a desire to remove that language about signs above the first story, so that even if they don't go through the character signs process, or if it's an existing sign, they're not limited by the fact that an existing sign projects above the first story.
I think that's what I would take away, the consensus.
Well, no, I think, so let's,
How about they can bring it forth to the planning commission to be able to do those
right,
things.
Second.
Instead of just saying, yeah, you can do it, they'll just have to come in front of us saying, hey, can we have a sign that goes
So you would say, so this is the language in our packet. It says signage, rehabilitation and restoration. Any and all signage existing upon adoption, which doesn't comply. So any sign above the second floor, for example, is the one I chose. May be continued as long as it is well maintained. However, the maintenance of such legal non-conforming signs shall be limited to repair of the sign structural or lighting elements and to the repainting and replacement of the sign face with identical new material, which most of the time you can't buy, message and original appearance. Should a change in material, message, or original appearance be desired, the legal non-conforming sign shall be removed. I mean, if it was me, I'd say anybody who has a non-compliant sign of this kind described, like a blade sign or something like that, should have some right to replace a sign in similar placement. If it's required. We're talking about how many signs? 3, 4, I don't know. But
Could potentially be more, depending on if somebody wanted to go back in records and put sign up that was historical.
well, but that falls into the character sign one.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
So I don't know, maybe the character sign thing does what I worry about, but I mean, I'm not in favor of providing for universal blade sign approval for large box retailers, right? I mean, and so if we widen it too much outside of the historical district, we run into a problem.
And I think right now, I don't think that's allowed there right
Right.
now. Nor would we be.
But my point is, as we're merging these sign ordinances, we have to think about them in both ways, right?
We're bringing them in, these rules into a section in the sign ordinance that's specific to the downtown.
Okay,
Yeah, so that's
so
gives us
then
more
it
comfort.
doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Will, did you have a comment or a question?
No,
on
I'm
this?
good, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
So I think I've heard that this last sentence here should be removed. I mean, based on what I'm hearing, that we don't want to have the sign removed.
Maybe what we should say is,
It could direct them to the downtown characters.
right,
review process.
approval, yeah, a replacement sign needs to be approved per, like, the character dealio. How's that? That got through to legal, right, of course.
All right, any other questions?
That might be keeping it just a little too broad. You might wanna sharpen that by saying within the existing flavor of the downtown, or,
Well, the downtown character,
yeah.
Yeah, I would say replacement or modification of the sign. If it's a change in material, message, or original appearance.
Any other questions, comments? Any other citizens wish to speak on this issue this time? Seeing and hearing none, I would then close the public hearing and move on to item number 6.2, which is consider the proposed zoning code amendments related to 23.829, parent 2, parent F, sign materials, 23.8229, parent 2, parent H, sign locations, 23.829, 4, signage rehabilitation restoration, and 24.913, parent 11, signage regulations in the downtown overlay district. there a motion?
So move as stated.
There's a motion, is there a second?
Second,
The motion and a second, any further discussion?
I would just direct staff to clean up the language on that last bit.
I think, do you have a clear kind of consensus where we're?
Yes.
Okay.
That was my only question.
Sounds good. All right, there's no further discussion. There's been a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 7, under new business, 7.1 is consider a 34 lot land division request of a final plat for the Harbor Club at Lake Lawn, addition number 1 within outlot number 4 of the Harbor Club at Lake Lawn. At 2600 East Juniper Street. Anyone care to make-
Mark and I were arguing.
All right.
Mark and I were arguing about who's gonna stand up and talk about
Oh,
this.
okay.
My name is Rick Zirk. I'm here on behalf of Fairwind and the Harbor Club at Lake Lawn. I do have slides and things if you'd like to see them, but relatively straightforward. Our phase 2 plat, if you will, is the westernmost cul-de-sac that was part of our GDP PIP plan, just wasn't part of the final plat because we ran into a whole batch of easements, a lot conflicts with the Delavan Lake Sanitary District on their lift station. Since then, with the assistance of the staff and the city attorney, we've been able to clear that mess up, and and all the easements have been resolved, new easements recorded for the sanitary district. So that whole mess is cleaned up, which allowed us to bring this last portion of the development back to you for formal approval.
Any questions?
Mark said it was supposed to take up an hour.
Yes, Kevin.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were done with questions. I was gonna make a motion.
Oh, yeah. I thought you had a question. I'm sorry. I thought maybe you had a question. Yeah, I'd entertain a motion.
So moved.
Okay. There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second,
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
just, should we go through each one individually?
If there's no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the help.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Do you wanna go to number 3?
7.3?
No, well, same applicants.
Yeah, we can do that, absolutely. If no one has an objection, we would move on then to 7.3, which is review and discussion of the concept plan for step 2 of the planned infill development at 2525 East Juniper Street, former Art Farm, with the proposed land uses. Let's see what that's.
Hello, Dave Securis, representing Lake Lawn Resort and also KSP Family, which is the ownership of the land parcel across the street from Lake Lawn, just north of Highway 50. So that parcel, about 275 acres, was annexed into the city a year and a half to 2 years ago, as we worked with the city at that point to make arrangements to have the water loop put around that property, et cetera. And that land was purchased across the street to do a number of things. One, to be some additional resources for the resort, to make room for the Harbor Club development with the developer representative that was just here. So we took down our maintenance building, we took down the old marina building. We had a lot of storage on site on the Lake Lawn grounds. This consisted of boats and piers in the winter, trailers in the summer, and some areas where we prepared and staged some landscaping, mulch, flowers. And so now a lot of those areas or the use is across the street, or our need for that is into the small southern west corner of that 275 acres. So it's about 17 acres of using that area right now. For instance, we had all these trees that came down a storm 2 months ago, and we kind of used that as a staging of preparing and processing some tree limbs, et cetera. So what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be putting forth an exact plan for that location in that 275 acres and make sure that that's conducive to what the other use of that property would be. As we go through with the Lake Lawn Resort Harbor Club, that development as that speeds along, but then we'll be coming forward with some other uses and some things across the street. So in a nutshell, we're a very introductory time period here of just some initial use and some plans down the road.
Are you looking for feedback?
Yes.
No, no.
The one thing with that property that myself, would prefer if, we're always talking about like businesses and all this other like landscaping and trying to like hide the stuff that we don't wanna see.
Yeah.
It would be, I think, extremely beneficial for some landscaping to be done there where when people come into the city, they're not seeing boat trailers on top of boat trailers, just junk out there. You know, it's the better word of saying is just don't leave it as a regular like maintenance place where crap is just all thrown. That would be my suggestion on that.
And you're specifically talking about the parcel north of Highway 50.
Yes.
Okay.
By the
You're
airport.
suggesting like screening.
Something other than, because when you drive by, I don't know if you noticed in the winter, there were all these boats back there that really looked like crap.
Yeah.
And then I assume you got trailers back there now, I haven't really looked.
Yeah, it kind of changes. In the summer, it's gonna be trailers.
Yeah,
In the winter, it's gonna be
boats.
boats. There is a tree line there, but then obviously in the winter, you know, the greenery cuts
Yeah.
down a bit. You see more of that.
Yeah.
It is a ways off of Highway 50, so it's
You can
not
still
directly
see it
on, but
pretty
you
well,
can
though.
see through that.
Mhm.
And obviously it's butt up against our property to the west of the airport, so there's not like a neighbor right next door. But as you're driving through into the city, I understand your point.
All of that stuff, I'll call it, used to be shielded from 50 by the woods.
That was south of Highway 50.
Right.
On the resort side, yes.
So did we ever have an agreement that that stuff could be stored there?
No.
Was it a permitted use then?
It was there at the time of the property was annexed even back in the 1980s.
What stuff?
So there's no provision in the annexation laws of the state of Wisconsin that said if you annex a property and it doesn't have an appropriate use, that it gets to keep that use.
So legal non-conforming use at that point.
What do you mean stuff? I think we might be talking about different stuff here. I'm sorry, I mean, when people throw out the word I think or stuff, it doesn't.
I started that.
The boat trailers in the summertime and the boats in the winter time, the pier parks, those are historically always on the south side of Highway 50. Historically, we're near the marina.
Yeah, they were allowed on the south side, we're talking about the north side.
Yeah, but, so there was not an,
Okay, I thought you were talking about the south.
there was not a provision then, but because of the topography of the land, they weren't as visible from 50, right?
On the south side, correct?
Yeah.
Well, I also thought it was part of the resort use, the conditional use of resort operations. I mean, there's vehicles that were parked, there's boats, there's pier parts, there's lifts. That's all part of a resort operation. And so it's been on the south side for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I
30
agree.
years.
I mean, I'm just trying to understand what was the legal.
And we weren't,
justification.
I wasn't complaining about the south side,
Right.
I was complaining about the north
Right.
side.
I understand.
Sure, because now it's more visible. That you're identifying.
I think no one ever saw the stuff on the south side in the past.
Except the people who were riding horses.
Right.
They haven't been doing that in a long time.
Which was the funniest FaceTime comment I've seen in a long time. What happened to the horse trail? I don't know. How old are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Will, did you have a?
Yeah, I do. How is that property currently zoned?
It's ag land currently.
I'm sorry?
It's ag land currently. Rural Holdings 35.
And is the past and current proposed use of the land in conformance with ag? Or however it's zoned?
Yeah, no, it's not. That's why we're here today. So there's a few different issues with it. One is, technically from a zoning standpoint, the things that are out there are technically off-site premise. Some of the same owners that own Lake Lawn also own that property, but it's under a different tax identification number, different, it's different owners. However, some of the owners are the same people, but, so there's that aspect of it. And then usually, when something's zoned ag, you're allowed to store like, things that are, like if you're farming it, so you could have like outdoor storage of trailers and just the stuff that's for that farm. And then.
So boat trailers do not count.
No, maybe one.
Not
if
unless
it's
you're
the
a
farm.
shrimp farm.
But yes, no, boat trailers would not.
So to cut through all that five, he's not in conformance.
Correct, yes.
So, but a rural holding district. You're saying provides us with some flexibilities?
I didn't speak to that because people are all looking at me. So what staff's solution was to this situation was to explore a planned infill development for this because outdoor storage is not permitted in the agricultural district. And so we would look at a PID with a commercial-based district that would allow for a certain amount of outdoor storage. So that, you know, as you see on the agenda, this is a concept review by the Plan Commission. And so we really are looking for feedback from the Plan Commission because if the applicant feels that he's got the green light or at least a partial green light from the Plan Commission, he will come forward with a GDP, with real site plan showing future plans.
And he would have to change zoning, correct?
That's correct.
He has to, okay.
That's correct. And
Just for the small portion?
well, that's something we can talk about. They could parcel it off and just rezone that portion and do the PID just for that area if they're not ready to provide the master plan.
I'm not sure you can do that because you're creating an island of zoning. I don't think that's allowed.
They actually had, there's some ways they could do it.
So when we annexed the property in, we did put that as part of the listing of storage and resort use was in the listing of different things that we could conceptually see for the future. That doesn't mean it's, proper at this point as the city or staff had spoke to. But this had been the plan that we don't want to necessarily build some, maintenance building. There's different buildings right there and it's going to be so close to Highway 50 that's going to mess up a whole future plan that maybe we put together. So we'll have to set something up temporarily and then look to kind of revamp something for the long haul.
And it seems to me like that's the answer
So if
to
we,
the whole question here is that you sat down with staff, come up with some type of a temporary arrangement that satisfies you folks and satisfies the city.
What we talked about already was, some potential screening, and you already mentioned it as well, to help with that scenario.
Kevin has,
Jackie,
Oh, yes.
So you're saying they could create a GDP without parceling that portion out? So would the GDP be for the whole parcel and say future development area except for this?
I think we could talk to the applicant more about what their specific plans are to figure out what the best approach would be. If they want to leave it all as one parcel, could do a GDP that leaves everything in ag except for the 17 acres that we're talking about here, and then That would be the only area where we allow any development, and that would include the uses.
But portions of it could be like, so that we have an ag district that's called future subdivision or something like that.
That's on the comp plan. It's on the comprehensive plan. That's not in the zoning code.
Oh, okay, all right,
Got it.
sorry, Mark.
I would say at least for the next 3 years, the 260 some acres would continue to be farmland. Until we get to a point where we have the conceptual plan and something else that we put together for that whole large
Well,
parcel.
all I'm trying to figure out is whether that has to be separated.
It would be simpler if we didn't.
Right,
Mhm.
that's my
Mhm.
point. And so the general development plan, so it would be very easy for us to, if they wanted to separate that land, say, here's the GDP for this land, it now goes to XYZ, it has Highway 50 frontage, blah, 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 blah. It's now gonna be resource operation use, which is some kind of commercial district that provides for that, and commercial and housing or something like that, because I don't think you want to take down those houses yet or anything. But
Existing housing.
right, but that would require a separation.
Well, we can create the GDP to be whatever we want it to be, so you wouldn't need, you would just
Okay,
have a map that shows here's where the existing residential will be, here's where the storage will be, here's where the agricultural will remain, and then if the applicant wishes to make any changes, 3 years down the road, they're ready to do whatever, they would have to come back for a GDP amendment. And that really gives the city all the cards, honestly.
so then your question is, what are the provisions under which we would accept a whole parcel GDP?
With non-agricultural uses.
No, with agricultural use, right? I mean, so that's the input you're asking from the plan commission. I think one is that, I don't know, from my perspective, I would ask that the residential be dismantled at this point, right? It's serving a purpose and stuff like that. And I think the objection has to do with, operational use and storage in an agricultural parcel that's not screened. I mean, that's the problem. And so I think some sort of way to address it, as we understand that there's gonna be an interim need, given what's going on at Lake Lawn, to provide for extra storage space, because it's being dislocated, would seem reasonable to me, as long as it's not objectionable and doesn't look like, you know, somebody's demolished car facility.
Yes. Is this all on regular dirt, gravel, concrete, asphalt?
Dirt mostly, the storage area. So there was an area that was previously tilled with farmland, that grass was laid down. That's where the area of trailers was kind of behind a tree line.
I think we need to figure something out about that.
Yeah, we were trying not to also lay down asphalt or create more dust, because if it's not gonna be part of a long-term plan,
Be
it's
able
only
to develop it
temporary.
anyways afterwards too.
I'm sorry.
And you wanna be able to develop it afterwards.
Yes, yeah.
I think the biggest part for me, as the zoning administrator, is just to, have something so that when I do have some complaints from other people as to why they had to do certain things, why we're allowing this, whatever it is that we allow. And then I would also say that if we're gonna allow something temporary, that we define what that temporary is, because a lot of times things that we say are temporary, all of a sudden 20 years are still temporary.
So with the time limit,
Yeah,
complete.
so I would say from my perspective, those are the issues.
So 18 months or so.
So how?
Any more questions from me?
Well, I was just gonna say, realistically, how soon do you think you can be back before us with a kind of a?
Well, obviously, we'll try to do that as quickly as possible.
And I appreciate that you
Yeah.
sat down at the developers meeting with staff and
Yeah,
then staff is following up.
staff, and obviously they're doing their job to make sure things are in compliance, and we just wanna have something that we can work through it together with the city. So I appreciate everyone's input. Thank you.
All right. So, did you want an official, I mean, there's a recommendation, but it was information only, I thought, so I didn't know that.
It's just the input.
Yep. That's the way I understood it, so, all right. Thanks again, Dan. With that, we will move back to item number 7.2, which is consider a plan infill development amendment to the official zoning map for a step 3 general development plan GDP for the former Pick and Save building at 207 South Wright Street, tax parcel XA4527-2, to allow for the development of out parcels in the business regional BR zoning district with development protection overlay. Applicant Brian Fisher for Fisher Consult LLC. Yeah. Mark, you wanna?
Mr. Mayor, as you're aware, this went to the council, after it came out of Plan Commission. Council sent this back to Plan Commission specifically to address the out parcels. Prior to the council meeting, the developer, the owner of this parcel, had removed from the table his request to consider expanding or changing of the indoor storage. He merely wants to see whether the city council, whether the city would consider the approval of the 2 out parcels. And that would be the only change he is looking for to the currently approved general development plan. And again, that general development plan had approval for expansion to the backside or rear of the old Pick and Save, and the potential to expand into where now the Dollar Tree is currently located.
So now that is no longer part of this?
No, that would, he is requesting that not change, but merely that the approval for the 2 out parcels.
So you're just setting that part to the side.
Yes.
So I want to clarify something, because in the agenda packet, the map, I should, or the diagram,
Did not change.
right, which still calls for future.
Correct, and again, the developer did not wish to spend any more time on this. He directed his consultant to put his pencils down were the words that we received.
So one, I always get nervous about stuff like this, when someone can refer back to a document and say, you took action on something and this is what I propose.
Not disagreeing with you.
So is he trying to get a feel if we would approve these 2 outbuildings?
He was looking for the city to consider approving the change to allow for the 2 out parcels.
We'll consider it, but he's not even here.
And you did reach out and asked if we'd like to have it removed, and I don't think we,
Several times.
yes, got a good response. Yes, Kevin?
And I haven't read as yet a justification for why he doesn't want to build like the first out parcel. And I want to clarify one thing with Jackie, because I think that they have defined out parcels as actually subdivisions, as opposed to what was originally approved, which was a developer-owned additional retail location.
That was on the same lot originally.
He's gonna see words.
No, I mean, so.
He is.
Right, so what he's actually asking for is the ability to market 2 commercial lots. Right?
Yeah.
Whereas before, we'd given him approval to develop and lease an outlot, a remote retail location, remotely retail building. Am I understanding that incorrectly?
Yeah, so the original proposal had building on the front end as you're showing.
Right,
Now
but it
it's
was defined as owned by.
It would be on the same parcel property as the main shopping center itself, correct?
Right, and lease, and basically what he's asking now, what he's defining as an out parcel would actually come before us in the form of some subdivision in the future,
Correct.
right? Yeah, so it's a material difference. Right, because we're not really making agreement with the developer even. He can market that out parcel, and then we're dealing with the new owners of the out parcel for their design.
Potentially, yes.
Right. So to me, that's material. The one other thing that I would comment concerning this is that I had never done it, and I have had these same two charts for the last 5 meetings, but I finally added up the square footage. If he is that concerned about additional storage square footage, he would have had basically the same storage square footage just by completing the plan as designed.
But he would have been able to use the existing structure, so from a dollar standpoint.
He told us that the amount it cost to build new storage versus just refurbishing it was roughly equivalent. So there's I mean, he could achieve his own goals if he would just live by the old GDP in my mind, so.
Thanks, Kevin. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion. There's no motion.
The item dies for lack of motion.
And it's unfortunate that the petitioner or the developer isn't here.
But- Okay, you wanna make a motion so we can deny it, so to be clear.
I think there needs to be some.
Okay, so,
resolution to this. Otherwise-
I would move that the commission act on the applicant's request.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
How's that gonna be worded exactly?
I make a motion to consider, yes.
To consider what?
He just put the motion
Yeah.
up, so you can vote it up or down. That's all we're doing.
I got you. So you're changing your motion.
I think it was pretty
Read
close.
the motion for me, please.
It says written in your packet.
Ah. So his initial motion then
His initial
It's
motion
gone.
was,
is gone. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm with you.
All right, everyone clear then on the motion? Any further discussion?
Is there a second?
Yeah, there was a
Yeah,
second.
yeah.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none. May we have a roll call?
Commissioner Kahaga,
No.
Mayor Schrader,
No.
Commissioner Beasley,
No.
Commissioner Lima,
No,
Commissioner Armstrong.
No. So
Motion
two of us opposed are all in sync.
All right. With that, we will move on to number 8, which is update on building and zoning related matters.
Well, we had Lake Lawn here tonight, so that helps, my list of, things that we're trying to get accomplished.
Did they sell both those houses yet, Chief?
The little houses up front, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think they're using those for, staff workforce.
Oh, I meant the new development.
Oh, the new, yeah, they have 16 homes sold over there. And 4 of them have permits, and then I believe I've got early starts on 2 or 3 of them until they get the road.
So I'm gonna do some math for them, because they said it was gonna take 5 years to finish, but they've sold 16 so far, and they're on trend.
Yeah, although yeah, and it might be more than that, it's been a while since they've, talked to me about it, but I think they had a ton of interest, because the ones that were up front closer to the lake are the ones that, the more expensive ones are the ones that have sold, so.
For those that don't know what those are roughly going for. you could share what-
Yeah, so the beginning ones, far away from the road are somewhere right around 700,000, and then the ones near the lake are going for 1.3. So, which I think I looked in the past, and I think the most expensive home I saw in the city of Delavan was like under 400,000.
Tip 4 is gonna close quick, to answer your question.
I asked because that will be a nice inflow of tax money into the city.
Very nice. And people that have, generally speaking, probably second homes and less of.
They might have more than second homes.
Yeah, it might be third, yeah.
That also can lower our taxes.
Yeah, from talking to the developer, I
Don't
believe,
get carried away.
Yeah, we wanna keep them, at least not have them go up for starters. We'll talk about reduction.
from talking to the developer about, I believe that most of these are second or third homes, and pretty much most of them are all cash buyers, so. And then, things are moving along over on, Arbor Ridge, with US Shelter, and then also behind the high school, we're probably gonna fill that out, before the end of the year. I'm actually predicting that I'm gonna probably do a minimum of 40 homes this year, which I believe in all of the past, I don't think they've ever gotten over 30. 32, yeah. My apartment's pretty busy.
Amazing.
And I don't know if you got any specific questions?
Well,
I do, yes. Speaking of screening, Kunis, we talked about screening Kunis dealership back when they came in and asked.
Are you referring to the Ford side? or-
Yeah, and it didn't appear to me, maybe I missed something, that we've done anything there. I mean, the trees are green again, but I don't see any fencing, I don't see any additional buffering.
I don't recall, any fencing. I do know that they were, in the back part, they were planting some trees that was a fence line.
They're short few.
Yeah, they're probably,
Very few.
yeah. I can check in on that.
I don't think they have lived up to the,
And they're still not 100% done with that project, but I will look into that.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that to my attention.
any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. There's a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second, all in favor of adjournment, signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thanks, everyone.